once again back much later than I promised I would be. It's been not necessarily a busy week, but I've just generally been in a bit of a mood this week. Of course, there is someone driving like a lunatic up and down the estate at the moment. I don't know when they're gonna stop. I don't know if they're gonna stop. I'm at home alone right now and the dogs are asleep, so hopefully, despite the window being open and people driving around like lunatics, I find that I quite like that noise, especially considering it's been raining. Like I said, I've been in a bit of a mood this week, not necessarily for any particular reason. The weather has just... I like the autumn season, but I don't like how the weather in this country gets. That is the distinction. So, I thought for today's video, for this week's video first of all, yeah, no, actually I might just get straight into it. So I thought for this week's first video, I'm going to try and get another one out probably by the end of Sunday. Hopefully. We'll see. But I thought I actually just came up with this idea for like an hour ago, because one of the reasons I didn't manage to come up with any videos this week was because I couldn't think of any ideas. I've got 2 ideas, one that I'm going to film later this weekend, so that will be out by like Sunday hopefully. This one should hopefully be out by at least Saturday morning, who knows, though. It's pretty late on a Friday night. I have like a bit of a, it's not really a cold, but it's just like a nasally sort of, generally unwell feeling at the moment, so the energy is not energying right now. But I was reading, and it's going to be the first one I'm going to go through. I was reading this, which is the Journals of Sylvia Plath. And there was a particular passage that I was literally just reading not if about an hour ago that struck me. And I thought it was in a letter that she wrote to one of her friends. So I thought I'd just go through a few of my like favourite book passages. So I have a few. So I thought we'd start with this one. This is from Sylvia Plath's journals. It's not just journals in here as well, it's like letters. Like this specific passage is from a letter. It's from a man named Eddie Cohen. And it says in this little description in the book, Eddie Cohen was a pen pal of Plath's, one of the very few people with whom she shared her true feelings. He was the first one to see the coming psychic break and advised her to seek psychiatric help to avoid it. The line of his she quotes here reappears in The Bell Jar, obviously Plath's most famous work, which, believe it or not, I haven't read yet. I have a copy of it that I began to read early this summer and have not finished yet. I need to do that though. Once I finish this, I'm probably going to start trying to read it again, but yeah, this is part of a letter to said Cohen. So, Eddie Cohen is how it's pronounced, I think. Your letter came just now. The one about your walk in the city, about war. You don't know quite what it did to me. My mental fear, which can be at times forced into the background, reared up and caught me in the pit of my stomach. It became a physical nausea, which wouldn't let me eat breakfast. Let's face it, I'm scared. Scared and frozen. First, I guess I'm afraid for myself. The old primitive urge for survival. It's getting so I live every moment with terrible intensity. Last night, driving back from Boston, I lay back in the car and let the coloured lights come at me, the music from the radio, the reflection of the guy driving. It all flowed over me with a screaming ache of pain. Remember, this is now, and now, and now. Live it, feel it, cling to it. I want to become acutely aware of all I've taken for granted. When you feel that this may be the goodbye, the last time it hits you harder, I've got to have something. I want to stop it all. The whole monumental, grotesque joke before it's too late. But writing poems and letters doesn't seem to do much good. The big men are all deaf and they don't want to hear the little squeaking as they walk across the street in clenched boots, Ed. I guess this all sounds a bit frantic, I guess. When you catch your mother, the childhood symbol of security and rightness, crying desolately in the kitchen, when you look at your tall, dreamy-eyed kid brother and think all his potentials in the line of science are going to be cut off because he gets a chance, it kind of gets you. Here I sit, apparently babysitting, in the deep cushioned armchair, the crickets rasping, buzzing, cheering outside. It's the library, my favourite room, with the floor of the medieval mosaic of the flat square stones, the colour of old book bindings, rust, copper, tawny orange, pepper brown, maroon, and there are deeply comfortable maroon leather chairs with the leather peeling off, revealing a marble pattern of ridiculous pink, the books, all that would fill your rainy days with, line the shelves, friendly, fingered volumes. So I sit here smiling as I think in my fragmentary way. Woman is but an engine of ecstasy, a mimic of the earth, from the ends of her curled hair to the cured fingernails. Then I think, remembering the family of beautiful children that lie asleep upstairs, isn't it better to give in to the pleasant cycle of reproduction, the easy, comforting presence of a man around the house? I remember Liz, her face white, delicate as an ashtray on the wind, her red lips staining the cigarette, her full chest under the taunt black jersey, as she said to me, "But think how happy you can make a man someday." Yes, I'm thinking, and so far it's all right, but then I do a flip over and reach out in my mind to E, Emily. Seeing a baseball game, maybe, perhaps, watching television or roaring with careless laughter at some dirty joke with the boys, beer cans lying about, green and shiny gold and ashtrays. I spiral back to me, sitting here swimming, drowning, sick with longing. I have too much concise interjection in me to break customs without disastrous effects. I can only learn envious against the boundary and hate the boys who can dispel hunger freely without misgiving and be the whole, while I drag out from date to date in soggy desire always unfulfilled. The whole thing sickens me. Yes, I was infatuated with you, apparently, Emily. I am still no one. No one has ever heightened such a keen capacity of physical sensation in me. I cut you out because I couldn't stand being in passing fancy. I must give my thoughts, my mind, my dreams, and you weren't having any of those. There is so much hurt in this game of searching, of testing, trying, and you realise suddenly that you forgot it was a game, and turn away in tears. I didn't think I'd be much happier if I didn't have any. I wouldn't waver on the brink of a nervous and emotional tears all the time. There's something about the way that she writes. There is something about that woman's mind and the way that she didn't align with her time in a way that so many creatives, and I'm talking good creatives of the 1950s, not the sort of Elvis Presleys who weren't actually very nice people at all, but I'm talking those kinds of people that just didn't fit with their times properly. Like when you look at it now, Sylvia Plath would have lived a much longer, probably much happier life if she was born in more modern times, or even like 20, 30 centuries on, maybe, when there was a greater awareness of things like depression and mental illness, which was very obviously what this woman was suffering from. She could have gone on to live a much longer life than she did. The treatment she received in the infamous Maclean Hospital was not enough, and that leads us into about 10 years later, another woman who was also going to become an author entered that exact same hospital, and that being Susanna Kaysen, who created the infamous Girl Interrupted. There is a specific analogy where Susanna Kaysen describes her experience with borderline personality disorder in such a way that I don't know why, but something in me just like clicked when I read this passage. I remember reading it so vividly. I was in the car on the way back from this like thing we went to with my family back in the summer. But I remember just being so entranced by the way that Susanna Kaysen describes this analogy that she came up with for her mental illness. It's interesting. It's in the chapter that is called Mind versus Brain, and it's a really interesting analogy that she uses. Whatever we call it, mind, character, soul, we like to think we possess something that is greater than the sum of our neurons that animates us. A lot of mind, though, is turning out to be a brain. A memory is a particular pattern of cellular changes on particular spots in our head. A mood is a compound of neurotransmitters. Too much acrolein, not enough serotonin. And you've got depression. So what's left of mind? It's a long way from not having enough serotonin to thinking the world is stale, flat, and unprofitable. Even further to writing a play about a man driven by that thought that leaves a lot of mind room. Something is interpreting the clatter of neurological activity. But is that interpreter necessarily metaphysical and unembodied? Isn't it probably an enormous number of brain functions working in parallel? If the entire network of simultaneous tiny actions that constitute thought were identified and mapped, then the mind might be visible. The interpreter is convinced it's unmappable and invisible. I'm your mind, it claims. You can't phrase me into dendrites and synapses. It's full of claims and reason. You're a little depressed because of all the stress at work, it says. It never says you're a little depressed because your serotonin levels have dropped. Sometimes it's interpretations you are not credible, as when you cut your finger it starts yelling, you're going to die. Sometimes its claims are unlikely when it says 25 chocolate chip cookies would be the perfect dinner. Often then it doesn't know what it's talking about, and when you decide it's wrong, or what is making that decision, a second superior interpreter? Why stop at two? That's the problem with this model. It's endless. Each interpreter needs a boss to report to, but something about this model describes the essence of our experience of consciousness. There is a thought, and then there is thinking about thoughts. And they don't feel the same. They must reflect quite different aspects of brain functions. The point is, the brain talks to itself, and by talking to itself, changes its perception, to make a new version of the not entirely false model. Imagine the first interpreter as a foreign correspondent reporting from the world. The world in this case means everything out or inside of our bodies, including serotonin levels in the brain. The second interpreter is a new analyst who writes op-ed pieces. They read each other's work. One needs data, the other needs an overview. They influence each other. They get dialogues going. Interpreter 1, pain in the left foot, back of heel. Interpreter 2, I believe that's because the shoe is too tight. Interpreter 1, check that, took the shoe off, foot still hurts. Interpreter 2, did you look at it? Interpreter 1, looking, it's red. Interpreter 2, no blood. Interpreter 1, nope. Interpreter 2, forget about it, okay? Interpreter 1, a minute later, though, there's another report. Interpreter 1, a pain in the left foot, back of heel. Interpreter 2, I know that already. Interpreter 1, it still hurts. Interpreter 2, it's just a blister, forget about it, okay? 2 minutes later. Interpreter 2, don't pick it. 1, it'll feel better if I pop it. 2, that's what you think, leave it alone. 1, it still hurts though. Mental illness seems to be a communication problem between the interpreters, 1 and 2. An exemplary piece of confusion. 1, there's a tiger in the corner. 2, no, that's not a tiger, that's a bureau. 1, it's a tiger, it's a tiger. 2, don't be ridiculous, let's go look at it. Then all the dendrites and neurons and serotonin levels and interpreters collect themselves and trot over to the corner. If you are not crazy, the second interpreter's assertion that this is a bureau will be acceptable to the first interpreter. If you are crazy, the first interpreter's viewpoint, the tiger theory, will prevail. The trouble here is that the first interpreter actually sees a tiger. The message sent between the neurons are incorrect somehow. The chemicals triggered are the wrong chemicals. Or the impulses are going to the wrong connections. Apparently this happens often, but the second interpreter jumps in to straighten things out. Think of being on a train next to another train in a station. When the other train starts moving, you are convinced that your train is moving. The rattle of the other train feels like the rattle of your train. And when you see your train leaving that other train behind, it can take a while, maybe even half a minute before the second interpreter sorts through the first interpreter's claim of movement and corrects it. That's because it's hard to counteract the validity of sensory impression. We are designed to believe in them. The train situation is not the same as an optical illusion. An optical illusion does not contain two realities. It is not that the vase is wrong and the faces are right. Both are right. And the brain moves between two existing patterns that it recognises as different. Although you can make yourself dizzy going from base to face and back again, you can't undermine your sense of reality in such a visceral way as you can with the train. That's not the full analogy, but the full analogy does go on for like a long time. We would be here forever. If I read the full 10 pages, because it's a very detailed description. But I loved Girl Interrupted. I liked the movie, but it was definitely another one of those situations like with the book I'm about to show, where I do think the writings were a lot better. But that's generally because they did a really good job taking Girl Interrupted and making such a like detailed film adaptation. Like Winona Ryder was awesome in that. So the next one is from one that I'm not sure that this will let me say out loud, so I'm just going to not say it, but it's quite famous, this one. But this is a specific passage from the exploration of the death of Cecilia Lisbon and sort of who she was and why she died. So our knowledge of Cecilia kept growing after her death too, with the same unnatural persistence. Though she had spoken only rarely and had no real friends, everybody possessed his own vivid memories of Cecilia. Some of us had held her for 5 minutes as a baby while Mrs. Lisbon ran back into the house to get her purse. Some of us had played in the sandbox with her, fighting over a shovel. Or some of us had exposed ourselves to her behind the mulberry tree that grew like deformed flesh through the chain-link fence. We had stood in line with her for smallpox vaccinations, held polio sugar cubes under our tongues with her, had taught her how to jump rope, to light snakes, had stopped her from picking her scabs on a number of occasions, and had cautioned her against touching her mouth to the drinking fountains at the 3 Mile Park. A few of us had fallen in love with her, but kept it to ourselves, knowing that she was the weird sister. Cecilia's bedroom, when we finally obtained a description from Lucy Brooke, confirmed this assessment of her character. In addition to a Zodiac mobile, Lucy found a collection of potent amethysts, as well as a pack of tarot cards under Cecilia's pillow that smelled of her incense and hair. Lucy checked because we asked her to see if the sheets had been cleaned, but she said they hadn't. The room had been left intact as an exhibit. The window from which Cecilia jumped was still open. In the top bureau drawer, Lucy found 7 pairs of underpants, each dyed with a black red. She also found 2 pairs of immaculate high tops in the closet. Neither of those things surprised us. We had long known about Cecilia's. We'd also often seen her on the back steps, scrubbing her high tops with a toothbrush and a cup of ivory liquid. Cecilia's diary begins a year and a half before her. Many people felt the illuminated pages consisted of hieroglyphics of unrealistic despair. Though the pictures looked cheerful for the most part, the diary had a lot. But David Barker, who got it from Skip Ortega, the plumber's assistant, told us that the Skip had found the diary next to the toilet in the master bedroom, its lock already gimmed, as though Mrs. and Mr. Lisbon had already been reading it themselves. Tim Winter, the brain, insisted on examining the diary. We carried it to the study his parents had built for him, with its green desk lamps, counter globe, and glittered edges encyclopedias. Emotional instability, he said, analysing the handwriting. Look at the dots and the eyes all over the place. And then, leaning forward, showing the blue veins beneath his wrinkling skin, he added, basically what we have here is a dreamer, somebody out of touch with reality. When she jumped, she probably thought she'd fly. We knew proportions of the diary by heart now. After we got it up to Chase Buell's attic, we read portions out loud. We passed the diary around, fingering pages and looking anxiously for our names. Gradually, however, we learned that Cecilia had stared at everybody all the time. She hadn't thought about any of us, nor did she think about herself. The diary is an unusual document of adolescence, in that it rarely depicts the emergence of an unformed ego. Standard insecurities, laments, crushes, and the daydreams are nowhere in evidence. Instead, Cecilia writes of her and her sisters as a single entity. It's often difficult to identify which sister she's talking about, and many strange sentences occur in the reader's mind. An image of a mythical creature with 10 legs and 5 heads laying in bed eating junk food, or suffering visits from affectionate aunts. Most of the diary told us more about how the girls came to be than why they did it. We got tired of hearing about what they ate. Monday, February 13th, today we had frozen pizza, or what they wore or which colours they favoured. They all detested creamed corn. Mary had tripped her tooth on the monkey bars and had a cab. And so we learned about their lives, came to hold collective memories of times we hadn't experienced, harboured private images of Lux leaning over the side of a ship to stroke her first whale, saying, I didn't think they would stink so much. Therese answered, it's kelp in the bayleens rotting. We became acquainted with the starry skies the girls had gazed under while camping years before, and the boredom of summers, trapezing from backyard to front to back again. Even the certain infamous smell that arose from the toilets on rainy nights, which the girls called sewery. We knew what it felt like to see a boy with his shirts. We could never understand why the girls cared so much about being mature, or why they felt compelled to compliment each other. But some time after one of us had read a long proportion of the diary out loud, we had to fight the urge to hug one another or to tell each other how pretty we are. We felt the imprisonment of being a girl, the way it made your mind active and dreamy, and how you ended up knowing which colours went together. We knew that the girls were our twins, that we all existed in a space like animals with identical skins, and that they knew everything about us, though we couldn't fathom them at all. All we knew, finally, that the girls were really women in disguise, that they understood love and even death, and that our job was merely to create the noise that fascinated them. As the diary progresses, Cecilia begins to recede from her sisters, and in fact from personal narrative of any kind. The first-person singular cases almost cease entirely, the effect akin to a camera pulling away from the characters at the end of a movie to show in a series of dissolves their house, street, city, country, and finally planet, which not only dwarfs but obliterates them. Her promiscuous prose turn to impersonal subjects, the commercial of the weeping in day and paddling his canoe along a polluted stream, or the body counts from the evening war. In its last third, the diary shows two rotating moods. In romantic passages, Cecilia despairs over the demise of our elm trees. In a cynical entry, she suggests the trees aren't sick at all, and that the deforesting is a plot to make everything flat. Occasionally she references to this or that conspiracy theory crop up, the Illuminati, the military-industrial complex, but she only faints in that direction, as though the names of so many vague chemical pollutants. From incentive she shifts without pause into poetic ravines again. A couplet about summer from a poem she never finished is quite nice, we all think. The trees like lungs filling with air, my sister, the mean one, pulling my hair. That little quote from Cecilia's diary, and sort of the pressings to trying to understand the sister's perspective, and sort of the experience of, again, I think that book is either in the 1970s or the 1950s, because I remember reading it and I was picturing the 1950s, because it discusses the parents going off to war, and I'm like, oh, well that must be World War II. But then I watched it and it was so much more 70s like, and it was like one of them was like smoking weed in his car, and I was like, they probably weren't doing that often in the 50s, and they weren't like going out and drinking in the 50s like they were in the 70s. So I searched up and it said it was set in the 70s. So and then I was like, well, what war did their parents go to? And I was like, oh my god, what happened in the 60s, the late 60s and the early 70s, the Vietnam War. That's why it doesn't say all of the parents went to war. That's why the town says it hasn't experienced that much death until the sisters, because not everybody went to the Vietnam War. It was like specific people that got called, because they did like a name lottery or something really weird. So these two are slightly lighter. I just thought to break it up, but I have discussed this book on the channel before, but I thought I'd read a couple little bits that I found struck me. This is from the 23rd chapter. It's called A Girl Called Ellie. My name is Ellie Pilia, and sometimes I get this feeling like I can't breathe. It happens when things feel heavy or difficult, sometimes even when they don't. Sudden or unexpected fear, overwhelming anxiety, panic. It used to happen a lot, and then it didn't. Things got better, the feeling disappeared. I hid them somewhere. They found it hard to escape. My name is Ellie Pilia. The feelings escaped. And then there's a monologue that this is a monologue that one of the characters writes for a drama exam, and this character has, I think it was anorexia or bulimia, one of the two. And like her mum had bipolar disorder, and it's like a really sad story. It's called The Voice. There's this girl I know, a girl called Hayley. She's that girl at school, the mouthy one. The one who has an opinion about everything, who never seems to shut up. I don't like her, even though I don't really know her. but I can guess who she is by the way she dresses. I can guess who she is by the people she spends time with. These are the choices she makes, the things she designs for you to see. She puts those choices out there for you to read her, like a book or a poem or a song. One of those cheap greeting cards from your local corner shop. The ones you buy when you've run out of time to care. Hayley is thin, too thin, people tell her. But for the longest time she thought she was fat. She is fat. Hayley is fat. She isn't that clever or special. Hayley is the youngest child of someone she worries doesn't like her, a father who ignores her, the sister of someone extraordinary. When she, Hayley, isn't at all that. Hayley was someone's girlfriend, but now she isn't. Hayley is Hayley anyone at all? Have I introduced myself yet? I'm the voice, the one in your head that drives you to desperation, the one that makes you tear your hair out, who tells you not to eat because eating is the one thing you can control, who tells you to binge because you can get rid of it all. Your fingers down your throat. Put your fingers down your throat. I am the voice, your voice, Hayley's voice. Hayley is the thing we all are. Hayley's a loser. Hayley isn't the person you want her to be. But she could be, if she would just try harder. Why doesn't she try harder? Hayley is tough like leather, not the buttery soft kind of a rich girl's handbag, but the scratchy and hard and difficult to love, practical, long-lasting leather, the kind of leather that protects you, that lets you feel nothing. But Hayley is confused. She keeps telling me to be quiet, fighting me when I've told her not to, when I've explained that listening to me is easier, giving in to me is easier. I am the voice, the one who knows all and sees all and tells all and is all. But Hayley can hear something else now. A smaller voice, nagging and consistent, brighter than it should be, the truth, she calls it. I've been trying to kill this truth, smoother. It pictures a good-looking actors, the kind I thought she liked, with long hair and jeans with holes in them, tortured artists and wounded souls who star in films about important things, things we need to talk about. I thought that would be enough, but it isn't. She doesn't want the actors I've shown her. She wants something different, different actors. She likes the long hair and jeans with holes in them, but she prefers them on girls. She prefers girls. She's always preferred girls. Loved boys. Loved girls, not boys. Not like that. Hayley's a lesbian. Hayley is gay. Hayley, whose boyfriend was the first person she came out to, who told her not to be afraid, even though I told her he'd be angry, that he'd hate her. He didn't. I've told her not to be the way she is. I've explained that this is wrong, unacceptable, but she isn't listening to me. Why isn't she listening to me? I am the voice. Your voice. Your voice. Your voice. Smoothing and melodical and familiar. I tell you things you already know. If you don't know who you are yet, then let me make it clear. You're mine, what I tell you to be. Don't listen to Hayley. She doesn't know anything. The truth won't set you free. I remember reading that for the first time, and it was such a striking moment, because I read that book in like a week, and it had been a year since. All 3 books came out sort of in like 3 years. It was like a book a year, and then there'd be another one. So I remember that was quite a really like interesting moment, and also it was like unexpected as well, because like the monologue is kind of like talked about, and you expect it to be, you know, something that, not something that is like produced in whole, maybe some like quotes from the monologue, or just, oh, she did her monologue today, she was really good. You don't expect her to suddenly come out as a lesbian and to talk about her eating disorder, and the whole monologue to be so poetic and there in full. That's what I really liked about it. It was really well written as well, and quite powerful. So the last one is from, again, another book I've talked about on here, but it's Alice Osman's Solitaire. So this one is from the very last chapter, and it went viral actually, this bit. So I don't think I had the bit. Oh my god, I don't. no, I can't read that because I don't have the right bit. Whoops. Yeah, that's all of them then. So I will maybe upload tomorrow. Whoops.